When I was an art student, when I started, I was a painting major. I wasn't in glass. Words like decoration were words that were pejorative terms. They were deployed in critiques to make you feel guilty and ashamed of something bad that you'd done in your artwork. What I understood from my teachers saying that they were somehow separate from the fine arts was that they were sort of trivial, like they were frosting on a cake, and that what we should be doing is exposing the pure structure of something or other. And ultimately, I just wasn't interested in that. I don't like my cake without icing. The icing, last I looked, was the best part of the cake. So I decided to make works of art that were all icing. King of Maggots is a good introduction to my work. It's the first piece I did after I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design. I was never going to make glass again, not because I didn't love it. I did love it, but I thought setting up a studio would be difficult. I didn't take stained glass seriously as an art medium. I thought it was some sort of weird hobby I had. I just thought it was over after being in the studios of the glass department at RISD. But I found myself in Philadelphia working at an art supply store. It was a terribly depressing job, and sometimes nothing was happening, so I was making lists of what it would take to set up a glass studio. And King of Maggots is basically the first piece I made in that studio, which was tiny. And it doesn't have a lot of the elements of my later work. It doesn't have sandblasting in it, for example, because I didn't have a sandblaster yet. And I think that it also shows how, at the beginning of my career, I was really deeply influenced by medieval art without being particularly educated in it. I just looked at picture books and read the captions. When I went to art school, I wanted to be a painter. I imagined that I was going to be a painter. My parents told me my grandmother was a painter. She was more of what you'd call a Sunday painter. But when I discovered stained glass, I knew immediately that I wanted to do nothing but that for the rest of my life. And I remember making this announcement to various authorities in my life, and they were like, "You're doing what? Why? How could you possibly know?" Working with glass was very, very exciting to me from the very outset, because looking at the history of glass, it seemed to me like you have your Gothic and you have Tiffany, and somehow I have missed the whole post-World War II European thing, so I wasn't thinking about that, thank goodness. And I thought, well, nothing's been done, Gothic and Tiffany, there's room for me here. And one of the things that was most important to me about glass, and I think it gets really disparaged sometimes in art school and by some people, is that I really wanted to innovate technically. I'm interested in technique. I got into art not because I wanted to be a philosopher. I wanted to make things with my hands. I love making things with my hands. When I think about what my work is about, I don't have the experience of making art that's like, I want to make a work about thus and such a topic. I'm going to do some sketches, and then I'll work them up and make a stained glass window, and then I will have made a work about that topic. I start much more intuitively than that. I start with doodles. They're not even sketches, just doodles. And I have hundreds of doodles. So at this point, for me to get excited about wanting to pursue a doodle, it has to be a very, very special doodle. So I take the special doodle, and generally speaking, the doodles are of women's faces. So I then attach them to some sort of a body, and at that point, I'm ready to make something in glass. I have no idea why that person is sitting in that position or has that expression on their face. It's just a person that's sort of visually and emotionally exciting to me. But I don't try to force a solution. So I work trying to design resolutions for these figures and see if something doesn't arise organically. All of the techniques I use have been around for millennia. Now I'm doing it with tools like a sandblaster, a flexible shaft engraver, things that look like dentist drills that plug in. But I discovered along the way that because all of those tools use diamond surfaces to abrade the glass, that you can actually unplug them and they will still abrade the glass. It's just slower, and for some reason I found that very appealing. And I started using diamond files. These are files that are made for people who make glass beads. They're not for stained glass artists at all. But they do amazing things in terms of bringing out tonality. So when people look at my work, they often think that they're painted images. One of the things that was really big in art education was to not do anything that wasn't true to the materials. And I got criticism for you're not being true to the glass, you're basically imposing a picture on this medium that is glass. And I was like, but this is what it can do. It can be taught to, jump up and beg and roll over and do amazing tricks. Why not do it? It can do it. How is that not true to the medium? I'm not interested in being true to the glass. I'm interested in torturing it. Everyone who works in glass and who loves glass is afraid to say how much they love how pretty it is. It's against certain intellectual codes to admit this. But I admit it. I am seduced by the glass. I think glass is beautiful. I don't think seduction is the worst thing. I don't think beauty and passion is wrongly placed in the arts. I think it's something that we go to art for. To deny art the power of sensual pleasure, why? Why would you want to do that to art or your life? Why would you ascribe to a philosophy that doesn't believe sensual pleasure is good? You're going to be unhappy. Think about it. And that's why I don't mind making art that I hope is delivering some beauty. Now, I know that people find it confusing that I am making really pretty pictures of some really ugly topics. But just because the topic is ugly doesn't mean the window isn't really pretty. And I guess my intention with that is to make something palatable that is important to deal with in order to, become an actualized human being that might just be unbearable otherwise. Perfection doesn't, in some ways, interest me. It implies sort of a cold admiration, whereas I'm more interested in my work evoking some sort of empathy. The piece, The Beached Whale, is the most recent piece in the exhibition. I'm very interested in maybe creating some sort of awareness about climate change, but that to me is not the full explanation of the image. Part of the piece, The Beached Whale, was still to make something beautiful. I think, specifically trying to make something that was poignant. Poignant is a weird emotion to sort of aim an artwork at. I have an extensive collection of imagery that inspires me, including many pictures of 17th century prints of beached whales. Whales beaching was always not quite a tourist attraction, but it was a sort of almost supernatural event, and that the people are astounded that something so big and powerful could feel something so passionately sad, and that makes me sad. There's a difference between empathy and compassion. Like, you can feel empathy, like, oh my God, I understand how the whale feels. I feel so sad, but not do anything about saving the whales. So I don't think that art is a place to convince people to save the whales, but I do think art is a place where you can empathize with the whale. So it might be a stepping stone towards compassion. When I first found out that someone was interested in organizing a retrospective of my artwork, I don't even think thrilled begins to cover it. I would imagine that most artists don't dare to fantasize about something that validating and wonderful, because it's probably not going to happen. So I didn't talk about it with anybody. I was really afraid I was going to jinx it. When I heard that Toledo was taking the show, I was thrilled. Again, I wouldn't dare ask, but it's a dream come true. It's an absolute important place in the history of American glass, and it's really an honor to have my work here.